Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and these are the best new knives unveiled at SHOT Show 2020, or at least they're my favorites. Let's check them out. SHOT Show 2020 has come and gone, and with it, we've got the biggest batch of new knife releases of the year. And the Knife Center was there in force, making deals and sifting through all the new products, and there were a ton of them. In fact, we're still posting videos that we shot at the show, but in the meantime, I want to take a look with you at some of my favorite things from the show. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that these are the best things from the show, although they all are very good, but these are the things that stuck out to me and the things that I was still thinking about even after the cameras stopped rolling. The first is undoubtedly SOG, the whole brand, not just a particular model, because the brand as a whole feels rejuvenated. Now last year, they really started to show us what they could do with their crossbar style XR lock with models like the Terminus and the Seal XR. It works great and it's a more than worthy competitor to Benchmade's Axis lock. And I'm happy to report that they're leaning into the strengths of that lock this year, rebooting a huge chunk of their models around it. Classics like the Aegis and the Trident and the Pentagon and more are now boasting updated ergonomic shapes, new materials like tie-and-eye coated D2 or XHP blades, nice looking colors beyond just black or gray, and pocket clips that no longer sport the large SOG lettering that can be a turnoff for some. They've made a concerted effort to make knives for everyone out there, with the ambidextrous locking mechanisms and reversible clips, and products targeted towards the tactical, outdoor, and EDC environments. If I had to pick my personal favorites, the first would be the SOG TAC XR. It's a very nice tactical and still all-around capable knife that has manual action, which I personally prefer, and a nice clip point profile, as well as the new Flash model, which looks nothing like the old Flash that you might remember. It has a great new handle shape, a great blade, and even though I prefer a manual, as I said, SOG's assisted opener on this knife is lightning quick and rock solid. Other big news from the show is Kershaw's foray into the entry-level balisong market with the Lucha. It sports stainless steel handles and a 14C 28N blade, but the biggest draw is their usage of KVT ball bearing pivots, all for a very affordable price of just a bit over $100. Now that gives you a lot for your money on paper, but what we all wanted to know going into the show is if it would be a worthwhile flipper, and I've got to say, I'm pretty confident that the Lucha is going to set a new bar for affordable butterfly knives. The KVT pivots, much as we expected, move very smoothly with virtually no resistance. And the handles, being made of steel, which is heavier than more premium metals like aluminum or titanium, has been milled and skeletonized enough that it closes that weight gap for the most part, and it's very nicely balanced overall. They've sweated the small details on this knife and it shows, all the way down to the latch, which features a rounded end to keep it from getting trapped by the handles while flipping. My favorite part though is the blade shape itself. It has some really nice proportions and it's a very usable profile if you press it into service. Because even on something like this that's made for acrobatics, it's nice to know it can still function as a knife. Now speaking of function, I was really impressed by the new Spyderco Siren. More so than I thought I would be based on the photographs, but that just goes to show that a photo never really tells the whole story. The Siren is a new lockback designed by Lance Clinton as essentially the folding knife version of the Waterway fixed blade. It's got a similar handle shape, made from G10, and has a fairly aggressive texture, more so at least than their typical texture, but not quite Emerson levels of aggressive, if you know what I'm talking about there. I really like the finger guard, which was shaped to look like a cresting wave when you hold the knife upside down, and it should provide a good deal of protection, and not just for the aquatic roles that it was designed for, but for tactical, EDC, and utility jobs as well. Like the Lucha, the best part about the Siren, again, is the blade. It's got a simple drop point profile and it's made with LC200N steel, which is one of my favorites these days. My Spidey Chef certainly shows the scars of heavy usage in my personal EDC rotation. It is virtually rust-proof and it has super steel levels of edge retention and toughness, and I'm always excited to see new knives in this game-changing steel. Now this next knife is one that I've been looking forward to ever since we saw the prototype at Blade Show last year, the Hogue Deca, named for Hogue's 10th year in the knife business. Now, I've always loved Hogue's X1 Microflip. I think it's a great little knife, but the Deca might be the knife that truly propels them into EDC superstardom. It features what Hogue is calling their Able lock, which is their take on the crossbar lock genre, and they've applied their meticulous precision to it and have come up with what is, in my opinion, the smoothest operating lock of this type on the market today. On top of that, features G10 handles, a few different colors of it in fact, with a nice milling pattern on it for grip, and you get your choice of a clip point blade or a modified Wharncliffe in CPM 20CV steel. The Deca offers tons of performance for a very reasonable price of just under 140 bucks at the starting level, and they're made right here in the USA, which makes the deal even sweeter. Now, a new brand coming to the Knife Center is Revo, and one of their models spoke to me right away, and it's called the Ness. I'm a huge fan of Nessmuck style knives. In fact, most of my personal collection revolves around the Nessmuck. It's certainly a classic fixed blade in bushcraft and woodcraft circles, but it's sort of an underappreciated pattern in the context of the broader knife industry today. Primarily a hunting knife, the Nessmuck is the genesis of my love for a knife with curves. And folding versions are rare, but the Revo Ness has the sexiest profile of any of them that I've seen yet. It has that signature broad blade with the prominent hump, and the G10 handle shape complements it perfectly. The flipping action is great too, and the steel is D2, and even though they aren't on our site just yet, the price is going to be very affordable. Alright, now for something that, unlike the last knife, is not at all my normal style. It's the upgraded version of the Benchmade Bailout, which now features aluminum handles and a coated M4 blade. Now I say it's not my style because I'm not really all that into Tanto blades, even though I can appreciate their utility, but this is one knife that I would happily carry. The blade is nice and thin, so it remains very useful for most EDC things, rather than being kept super thick and brutal, which is the way a lot of Tantos are made these days. And I also appreciate the subtle curve on both the main edge and the tip section. The biggest headline with this knife though, apart from the switch to M4, is the aluminum handle, and it definitely transforms the feel of this knife. Even though this is still a precise cutter rather than a big bruiser, the new construction lends the knife a much stronger feel overall. And the anodized texture is left sort of a matte finish for grip. It kind of reminds me a bit of a bead blasted finish. And it also has a little bit of curvature too for an even nicer feel. They've even updated the bail on the end of the knife to now include a small glass breaker. And with these bevy of upgrades, it really makes it feel like a completely new knife, and it should be even more appealing than the original. Alright, now it's time for a couple of fixed blades from Kaybar, and first is the new Kaybar wrench knife. Now this knife is forged to mimic the knives that home smiths like to make using old wrenches as the starting point, and not only does this new knife look cool, it's also an excellent small design for a fixed blade EDC. Now the end of the handle does feature a cutout, but it's decorative only and not functional as a wrench. It just mimics the same look. But it's probably safer that way, because you wouldn't exactly want to be gripping the blade end of the knife, even though it would have a sheath on it when you do it. It gets a little bit dicey. The steel is 425 stainless, and with a drop forged look, each one's going to be a little bit different in terms of its surface imperfections, which are all part of its character. I think this is going to be a very successful knife across a lot of different demographics, but I especially like the idea of a tradesman putting one of these in their toolbox or tool belt, since it's going to fit right in with all the other tools without raising any eyebrows. Now, even bigger news than the wrench knife this year is the first new mainline Becker knife and tool model in some time, the BK18 Harpoon. This is based on the mid-size Becker handle, think BK16, which the Becker heads affectionately refer to as the tweener knives. The 18, of course, as you can see, features a harpoon point profile with a more acute tip than the 16 and a heck of a lot more belly. In fact, I think it's actually a pretty good blend of two discontinued tweener models, the BK15 and the BK17. It's got almost as much belly as the trailing point BK15, but like the clip point blade of the BK17, this knife has a more acute tip for better piercing. Might make this new design the most versatile tweener yet. And it still features the classic Kaybar Becker construction. We've got 1095 CV steel, it's about 5/32 of an inch thick, and it's just over 4¼ inches long. But this time around, they've switched it up a little bit and have gone with a tan powder coating and tan handles only. There's no black at this time. Lastly, a quick mention on the sheath. It's actually very nice. It's an all-new synthetic design that clicks the knife into place much like Kydex. It's got plenty of holes and slots for extra carry options, as well as being able to add cordage or other things to the sheath, and it's even going to fit the 16 and 17 knives as well. Alright, I'm going to start wrapping things up here with a few non-locking designs, and the first is from Victorinox, and it's the new Swiss Army Classic SD National Parks series. Now, each of these knives feature artwork that were commissioned by the Works Project Administration in the late 30s, early 40s, and they were designed to promote our nation's national treasures. They've been painstakingly restored, and they're now under license on these knives. Now, I've long been a personal fan of this artwork. I've got a few prints of them back at home, and having them now on the classic SD feels like such a natural pairing. They're evocative not just for the place that they're depicting, but also the time where they were originally painted. We've got classics like Yellowstone, Mount Rainier, as well as Shenandoah in our backyard here in Virginia, and several more. And they even feature the name of the park on the reverse side in the original typeface from the posters. They're going to make great collectibles and great gifts as well, since the classic is one of the easiest ways to keep a knife on hand for a lot of people out there. Just hook it onto your keyring and away you go. And this series is a great way for outdoor lovers to brag about their favorite parks. Alright, the next two knives actually push the envelope a little bit on the non-locking genre. And the first is a new Archeo prototype that we saw from Artisan Cutlery. Now this is a double detent style of knife, which I think of as sort of a modern reincarnation of a friction folder. You've got a detent bar on each side of the handle that provides tension on the blade when it's open. When ZT first released their 0230, we realized how fidgety this style could be, as you can flick the blade closed with one finger with just a little bit of practice. The new Archeo takes things a step further and adds a flipper tab, which means you can flip open this non-locking knife with just one hand, just like any other flipper out there, and push it closed just a heartbeat later. It's super fun, and it rivals automatics and crossbar lock knives in terms of the speed that you can open and close the blade. Now, if that wasn't enough, they even added more to the utility with a small hardened pin attached by a lanyard, which can slot into the handle and essentially lock or brace the blade in the open or closed position. This knife was a lot of fun, and especially with that pin, it could even be a pretty good workhorse. Now, as I mentioned, these were just prototypes, but based on the reaction they were seeing at the show, I'd expect them to be getting into production very soon. Finally, we get to the last item, and for me, this is probably my favorite new knife that I saw at SHOT Show 2020, is the Lion Steel Thrill. Now, it is a slip joint, but it's not just any old slip joint. Lion Steel, of course, is famous for the way they execute integral frame locks. And now they've taken that expertise and applied it to the non-locking Thrill, with a single-piece titanium or aluminum handle with the backspring milled out of the same piece of metal. It creates such a cool and novel look, with the anodized finish wrapping all around the handle. And you've got some brighter color options on the aluminum versions, and more refined shades on the titanium, similar to their other designs when they use those two elements with their frame locks. Now, it also takes another cue from their frame locks with a hardened steel insert on the end of the backspring itself. Now, this allows the blade to mate up perfectly without wearing down the softer metal of the handle, which would just end up resulting in blade play over time otherwise. Now, the new integral construction is more than just a novelty. The walk and talk on every one of the ones I picked up at the show was fantastic. It's nice and snappy without being too difficult to move around, with a definitive half stop in the travel. And the blade steel is no slouch either. As you would expect from Lion Steel, we've got M390 with a really good shape and a useful full flat grind. Now, as if that wasn't enough, they've even fitted this knife with their H-Whale pocket clip, which first debuted on the Rock. It's spring-loaded, so it pulls flush, or actually inset into the handle when you're using it, which makes the knife very comfortable to use. No hot spots from the clip at all. Then, you just push it out when you want to clip it in your pocket, so that unlike most slip joints, it won't be floating around willy-nilly in your pockets, which means a lot of folks are going to be more likely to carry a slip joint again. And this 3-inch bladed non-locking knife is the perfect thing to take with you almost anywhere. So those are just my favorites from SHOT Show this year, but this is just a small sampling of all the new stuff that we saw. You can actually check out our SHOT Show playlist, we'll leave a link for that, and let us know what your favorite new knives were in the comments. In the meantime, if you want to get your hands on what you've seen here, we'll leave links in the description. Now, some of them are still making their way to dealers, so be patient if you can't find exactly what you're looking for right away. But be sure you're signed up for our Knife Rewards program in the meantime so that you can earn free money with every knife you buy from us. Now, if you want to see more cool knives, make sure you're subscribed to our channel because we're going to be showing off new stuff every week as things hit our shelves. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center signing off. Thanks for sticking around and following all our SHOT Show coverage. See you all next week.
That was like as sinky as it gets.
That's going in the blooper reel.
As a destructive German child.
The tie-dye blade. Excuse me, we're running a video.
Losing our voice half the time from talking so much. So I'm going to talk to you about knives.